Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 47 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're teaching your Raspberry Pi who's boss. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall glass of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice, no sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're pouring your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to our friends over at Sunfounder. Sunfounder is actually sponsoring this most excellent series of lessons. And in this class, we will be using the Sunfounder Raphael kit for Raspberry Pi. The Sunfounder Raphael kit. Most of you guys probably already have your gear. If you don't have your gear yet, look down in the description. There is a link over to Amazon. You can hop on over there and pick up a kit. And believe me, your life and my life are going to be a whole lot easier if we are working on identical hardware. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to teach you is a follow-on to what you learned in lesson number 46 last week. And what I showed you last week was how in OpenCV and the Raspberry Pi with the Raspberry Pi camera connected, how you could go out and grab a frame, show a frame, and create a video display from the little Raspberry Pi camera. And I showed you how you could overlay on that video display text. So I showed you how you could put text on your video feed. And the text that we demonstrated that with is I showed you how to calculate, how to measure, and then calculate frames per second, and then have a live updating text view on top of your video feed showing the real-time frames per second. Well, there's things that you can annotate your video feed with besides just text. And so what I'm going to show you today is how to do circles, boxes, and rectangles. And I'll show you how to do those three annotations today. Sound pretty cool? I hope it does. So let me get out of your way. And now that I'm out of your way, we can go ahead and we can switch over to the Raspberry Pi. And I don't want to start completely from scratch. I want to start where we left last week to make things move along a little bit quicker. So we need to come over here to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com. I need you to come down and use the happy little search icon and search on something like calculating frames per second in OpenCV. You should come to this page. And then what this will have is down here, it has the code that we finished with in last week's lesson. And you can just click on those two little boxes and you will copy the code. And then if you come back over here to your Thonny window, we can come in and we can paste it. And we should at this point be exactly where we were at the end of last week's lesson. But just to make sure that the universe is in proper working order, let's come on in and let's do a run here. And boom, look at that. Okay, we've got a 1280 by 720 live video feed. What do we have right here? We have an annotation of a live real-time measured frames per second. Okay, so that is all cool, and you should remember how to do that. You should remember how to do that from last week. Destroy all windows. I'm missing an open close there. I guess somehow I didn't get that copy, but that should work now. It just didn't kill that window when I killed the program, but I think we're all good to go now. So now what we want to do is we want to learn how to, let's start by learning how to put a rectangle, okay? Now understand that the magic happens between when you grab the frame and when you show the frame. So where do you need to do your annotations? Between grabbing the frame and showing the frame. And you can see this is the annotation that we did last week to put that text on there. And so now what we are going to do is we are going to put a rectangle. Okay, we're going to put a rectangle. So how do we do that? Well, we are going to say CV2, our library, dot rectangle, our method. And then where do we want to put the rectangle? We want to put it on IM, which is the image that we grabbed up here. Okay, and now we've got to tell it several things. We've got to tell it where the upper left corner of the rectangle is and where the lower right corner is. So we give it the upper left and the lower right, and that will define the rectangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put variables in here, and I'm going to explain those variables, and then we will go up above and we will put values in those variables. But we're going to have upper left, and upper left needs to be a tuple, meaning that it needs an open parenthesis, a closed parenthesis, and kind of like the column value and the row value. Okay, and so it's going to be upper left will be a tuple, and then we need similarly lower right, like that. So we have defined the bounds of the rectangle. I have to remind you that you have to keep track. The way OpenCV thinks of things is column, comma, row. The first number of the tuple is the column. The second number in the tuple is the row. So it's column, comma, row, which is sort of the opposite of how people do things in math. With math, you sort of do it the other way. But in OpenCV, it's column, comma, row. It doesn't really matter. You just have to remember what it is. Now, what we need to do is we need to tell it the color. So I'm just going to say rectangle color, and we'll define that above, and that will be a tuple which will have a blue value, comma, a green value, comma, a red value. So a tuple with three numbers. That sounds like that should be a threeple, doesn't it? But there's no such thing as a threeple. It's a three-element tuple with blue, comma, green, comma, red. Okay, what else are we going to have to do? We are going to have to define a thickness of the line. So we're going to make this rectangle, and how thick do we want that line to be? Okay, I think that is right. I've got upper left, lower right, I've got our color, and I've got thickness. Now let's come up here and put some values in for that. And I'll leave a blank line just so we can kind of see the new stuff that we are doing here. And so I need an upper left like that, and the upper left I'm going to put as I'll go ahead and make this a tuple. Upper left is going to be, I kind of want it towards the upper left of the box. Where do I want it on the overall frame? Well, let's put it kind of towards the upper left of the frame itself. And so I could say that my my column value is going to be 250, so I'm going to come over to the 250th column, and then I'm going to come down to the 50th row. Okay, so that's kind of more or less upper left of the frame, but it is over 250 pixels, and it is down 50 pixels. Now I need to define the lower right. And so the lower right is going to be equal to, and remember, the upper left of the overall frame, the whole frame upper left is 0, 0, and the lower right is going to be your display width on the column and the display height. So you could go over by display width, and you could come down by display height. So you've got to kind of start getting this in your mind. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and say the lower right. Well, I want it to be about 100 columns wide. I want this rectangle to be 100 columns wide, so I'm going to add 100 to 250, and I get 350. That's going to be the width. And now on the height, I think I want the height to be 75. Let's say the box height to be 75. And so 75 plus 50 would be 125. So this should be a rectangular box that is going to be annotated onto my image. What else did I have down here? I need the R color, so R color. And I think I'm going to make it purple, okay? And remember, it is blue, green, red. So purple is blue and red, so blue is going to be 255 turned on. Green is going to be 0, and then red is going to be 255. And that should be kind of a purple color there. And so that'll give me the color. And then how thick do I want the box? Well, let me do a thickness. Let's just try a thickness of about 3. And we can adjust these afterwards, but let's look at that. So that's defining the parameters. I had the 4 parameters plus image, and I've got 4 parameters plus image. This might just work. Let's hold our breath. Boom. Look at that. Right there, we have a little rectangle that we defined, and then we're sitting here operating at 30 frames per second. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. So let's play with some of these parameters. So I'm going to come in, and I'm going to quit out of that. Boom, it killed the window this time because I got those parentheses in as they should have been the first time. So let's see, what if we make a box thickness of 7? That's a line thickness of the outline of the box, and you can see that is indeed quite a bit heavier. And let's say that we want to move it more towards the bottom right. We want it more towards the bottom right. So the upper left would be, let's say the upper left, let's make this 650, and and the lower right column would be 750. So I've moved it kind of way over to the right, and let's see what I'm set at a width of 1280, so I'm still squarely in the frame. And now let's set the row. So we want the row to be low, and so let's come down to, let's say 500. And then if it's still 75, we would add 575 for 575. So this should be the same size box, just now more tending towards the lower right. So let's see if that works. Yeah, okay, that looks good. That's looking like it's doing what we expected. Let me show you another interesting one. Okay, so you see we can change the color. What if we wanted it to be white? White is all red, all blue, all green. And so if we made this 255, if I'm thinking about it right, this should be a white box. Boom, okay? What if we wanted to make it a solid box? Well, this is something you have to know. If you want solid, you make the thickness a -1, and now it will make a solid box. Giddy up, okay? If we wanted a black box, what would we do? Well, black is the absence of color, so that would be 0, 0, 0. This should be a black box. Boom, right there. There's your black box. Okay, so you see now we're starting to learn about how to manipulate the frame that we grab. What do we have to remember? We have to remember that the first number is the column going from 0 to the width of your display, and the second number is the row going from the top row down to the bottom row, which would be your display height, your display width by display height. That's how the numbers work, and you've got to kind of remember that. Now, I'll tell you one other little thing that we should probably know. Let's go ahead and just take a look at that. Here I grab the image, okay, and you've got to realize the image is just an array. It's got rows and it's got columns. It's just an array, okay? And so what I could do is I could come in here and I could say print, and what could I print? I could print image, and I could print the pixel row. I could print the pixel column 0, comma, row 0, like that, okay? And then I could close this. And then what I want to show you here is that if we now do a run, it's going to print out that pixel. Okay. Do you see how it's printing that pixel down here? And so let's see, it makes it disappear when I stop it. But you see, I went out and I grabbed one pixel, that corner pixel 0, 0, and it's telling me up there that the blue value is about 105, the red value, blue-green, is 150 at blue, green, red, and then the red value is very low, 20. And so you see it's really reading mainly the green in that upper corner. Okay, so you see you can go in and even look at an individual pixel if you want to. Okay, the thing that you have to see though is because this starts at 0 and we're going to 1280, the width is 1280, really we can look at what, from 0 to 1279. If you went to 1280, you would be out of range because the width is 1280, but we're starting to count at 0. And similarly, when we say 720 here, when we say 720 here, since we're starting at 0, you can only go to 719. And if you don't realize that, and if you don't remember that, sometime when you're indexing something, like if we just came in and we said index, let's look at the point 1280 and the point 720, and I want to print that. Now if I come in and try to print that, what's going to happen? I get an out of error. Okay, so you see it's saying that it's, that the 1280 is out of bounds and the 720 is out of bounds. So you see, you've got to make sure that you don't go to what your width is. You've got to go to one less than the width, if that makes sense. And I'll talk more later in future lessons about that data structure, but I'm just trying to get you to feel comfortable that what is image? Image is a two-dimensional array made up of columns and rows, and the intersection of a column and a row is a pixel. And then on that pixel, we can define colors. Hopefully that starts making sense to you. Okay, and did we run this already with a solid? Let's run this with a solid just to make sure that I showed that. And yeah, solid. Okay, and we made that black. So that is good. So now how do we do a circle? All right, well, I'm going to come here. And we do it with cv2.circle, as you might imagine. Where do we want to put the circle? We want to put it on the image. And then here, where do we put it? We put it on the center. Okay, let's, I'll just call the center cent for short. Okay, and then what else do we need there? We are going to need the R for radius of the circle. And then what else are we going to need? I think that we are going to need, this is pretty simple. I think now we just need a C thick. Okay, and I'm making it different. I'm making these different variables than the rectangle so we can set them independently. And so let's see, what we're going to need is a center. And I'm going to put it in the center of the frame more or less. So that would be, the center would be on the column. It would be 1280 divided by 2 would be 640. And then the height is 720 divided by 2 would be 360. It needs to be a what? It needs to be a tuple. So we will put it inside of the parentheses to make it a tuple. That should give us that. And now our color, let's see if we could make this thing kind of a yellow, okay? And so how would we make it a yellow? Well, yellow is green and red, so it's blue, green, red. So blue is 0, green would be 255, and red would be 255, like that. And then let's give it a C thick, and let's make it about 7 so we can see it, all right? Now, we are going to still leave the text, and we are going to leave the rectangle on it. So let's see what happens now. R is not defined. What is that? Oh, okay, I forgot. Yeah, R. So let's make the radius, 35. So we'll get a pretty big circle. So I'll say radius is equal to 35, like that. And now we will run. Okay, Shazam, look at that. You see, we have the circle right there. Okay, why is that so thin? We got the rectangle, we got the circle. What did I do on that circle? Let's see. Something is not good there. I had a premature boom there, maybe. So let's see, the rectangle, the circle is the image. That's good. The center, okay, which is good. The R for radius, which is good. And the C thick, which is good. Man, that sure didn't seem like that sure did not seem like something that was that thick. And it looked like it was black. What did I do wrong here? R color. Did I not set? I didn't put in here. I did something crazy here. I forgot to put the color in. Okay, I forgot to put the color in. I'm so surprised that it even made it. So we'll call it C. Color needs to go in here after the radius, yeah. And now we'll come up here and we'll put in C color. And now let's make it the 0, 255, 255. Now let's go up and on our rectangle, let's try to make our rectangle orange. And how would we make the rectangle orange? Blue, green, red. I think you want a lot of red and you want not so much green. And I think we can get this thing orange. Maybe we'll go 125 and that should move it in the direction of orange if I'm thinking right. So let's run this thing. There it is. Giddy up. Okay. Got a yellow circle and I have an orange square. All right, let's see. That is pretty cool. So you see you can adjust the parameters here to put what you want where you want. And what you just got to remember is you've got to remember that every time through you have to put these on here, because if you put them on only once, the next time through they're not going to be there. So what are we doing? We are each time through the loop grabbing a frame, putting text on it, putting a rectangle on it, putting a circle on it, and showing it, grabbing a frame, and then doing that. And let's just see, I'm going to predict that if I cut this and then I do it after the show, I shouldn't do these live experiments, but I would predict that this it's not gonna be there this time. What is that I am? Oh, I'm sorry. I moved the read above. I didn't mean to do that, so I'll cut that. I'll put it back up. So we are this time. What are we doing this time? We're going to read, show, and annotate. Okay. We're going to read, show, and annotate. And you see the annotation's not there because what we read it, we show it, and then we put all the annotations on. And when you do that, the annotations don't show because you did them after you showed the frame. So these have to be in that magic spot, the magic spot between read and display. And when they are in the magic spot between read and display, then everything works as it should. Okay, now, one thing I want you to see is that we started out at 30 frames per second, and then we did the annotation of the text, we did the annotation of the circle, and we did the annotation of the square, and we're down to about 27 frames per second. So you can kind of start to see as you start doing your magic here between the read and the show, you're able to sort of start slowing this thing down. So you want to do things as quickly as possible, and you want to do as little of this monkey business as you can, because as you're doing this, you're going to be very slightly slowing down your frame rate, if that makes sense. Okay, guys, I hope this has made sense. Now what I want you to do is I want to give you a homework assignment, okay? And I'll show you what the homework assignment is here. And I'm just going to run it real quick. Okay, I'm going to run it real quick. And what I've done here is I still have the annotation of the frames per second. Look at that. With this one, I'm still just almost 30 frames per second. And it's coming up. And when my annotation gets to the right, boom, it bounces. Giddy up. It bounces. It's going to come down now. It's going to hit the bottom. Kapow, kapow. So you see, this is an annotation that is dynamically adjusting its position, and it is a rectangle, but the rectangle is moving around in a very predictable way, and it is staying within the frame of the camera. That is your homework assignment to do that. I will tell you, my friend, I have given you enough information for you to figure out how to do this. What do you have to remember? You start with column and then row. It's column, comma, row for the things like position and so forth. And I showed you how to make a rectangle. Now you got to bring this thing to life and see if you can do this. When you do this homework assignment, post your solution to YouTube, and then in your description, link back over to this video lesson, and then in the comments down below, leave a comment with a link over to your homework solution. And when you guys do that, I look at every single homework assignment that you guys do. The reason I'm giving you this homework assignment, you've got to start thinking of your image, and you have to start thinking of that video frame as data, and you've got to start keeping track of what's where, and you've got to start thinking through this, because we're going to do some really cool things coming up in future lessons, but you really got to get comfortable with where you are on the frame, if that makes sense. Okay, guys, I hope you are having as much fun taking these lessons as I am making them. If you enjoyed the lesson, give us a thumbs up. It helps us a whole lot. If you will leave a comment down below, that helps us with the old YouTube juice. And the more comments you leave, the more love that I'll be getting from YouTube. And then also, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, when you do, make sure you ring that bell so that you get notified when my future video lessons are released. And most importantly, share this lesson with somebody else, because the world needs more people doing engineering and fewer people sitting around watching silly cat videos. Paul McWhirter with TopDeckBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.